My name is Janine, and I'm going to talk to you about how not only can your student graduate high school with their bachelor's degree, but they can have all the time to do extracurricular activities, volunteer, do internships, apprenticeships, you name it, anything and everything that you want. And so I'm excited to tell you that I'm the founder of Smarter by One Degree. I also am the owner of a private online middle school and high school. I've been a teacher for 24 years, and I absolutely love coming to these homeschool conventions because I was you 10 years ago, and I was frantically trying to figure out what I was going to do. Is anybody in the same boat that's here today, where you're like, please, somebody just tell me what to do? We all work a lot, right? We have families, we have responsibilities, and we all don't have the time it takes to become an expert in everything. I tell people all the time, I am not an expert in everything, I'm an expert in this. And so that's what I love to do, is go around and tell you about an option that you might not know about. So I'm going to be talking about, obviously, college credits, but I want you to know that I also homeschooled 4th through 12th, and I was dreading high school. I don't know, maybe that's a bad admission, but I was so worried I was going to screw my daughter up. She was going to miss out on scholarships or opportunities. I don't know what I thought, but I thought all the things. So if you've also thought that, what are we doing homeschooling high school? This is when it's chemistry, and how many of you could teach chemistry, but you don't want to, like me? Same goes with algebra and everything else. And so just because I could didn't mean I wanted to. And I also didn't think I was the best at it. I wanted my daughter to have an algebra teacher that made it make sense. And it never made sense to me. And so it didn't make any sense that I was going to be that person without the tips and tricks, without the know-how, the expertise. And how about just the person with the passion to do math? I don't have that passion either. Maybe you don't either. And so let's start off with the very first way that we probably all have walked into the room knowing about dual enrollment. How many of you have thought about, researched, or looked into dual enrollment? Yeah. So this is where I started. And I thought, oh my gosh, we figured it out. This is the answer to homeschooling high school. We can put our kids in dual enrollment, and once again, they get that expert teacher. They can earn college credit. We can help them hopefully not go in debt for a degree or have lower student loans. But one thing that I realized very quickly from working with youth and volunteering with youth is that a lot of kids were dealing with stress, anxiety, depression. They were having a hard time because they were having a large workload. It also limits them to how many credits they can earn in high school because it takes a full semester, right? And there's a lot of work, and so a lot of times kids that do dual enrollment stop going to co-op, stop volunteering or doing the things that you want them to do, maybe even extracurricular activities. So my daughter always played sports, and so her friends were dropping off, and they were not involved in these things that we want our kids to be involved in. Another thing about dual enrollment was a lot of times there's agendas and there's conversations that are talked about in these classrooms that maybe you don't want your 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old to be learning about. Most community colleges or even online universities limit dual enrollment to being a junior or senior or being a minimum of 16 years of age. And so once again, it seemed like a limitation. My daughter was homeschooling, and she was going to take U.S. History 1 when she went into 9th grade. Now, how many of you took U.S. History in 9th grade or 10th and then went to college and took it again? Yep, we all did. If you got a degree in the United States, you took U.S. History. What about government? We did it again. How about algebra? We did it again. Okay, so for me, as an educator, I was already thinking decades ago, what in the world are we doing? This doesn't make any sense. I got into college and I thought somebody tricked me. I'm like, why am I in English again and biology again in these classes? And so my daughter was ready to start when she was starting 9th grade. But again, we were limited because with dual enrollment, you had to be a junior or senior near our house. I live in Fort Worth, Texas. And so we had to wait. And I, once again, didn't like that. So there was negatives that went with it, even though there were positives as well. So it's one way to earn college credit at a discounted price. That is one of the main perks about dual enrollment, and that can be an amazing thing. But what if you have a student who is ready to start before 16 or their junior year? Do we have any of those in the room, like my daughter? Yeah. What if I told you that there was a way to earn college credit where it focused on learning without busy work and your kids would have time to do everything I talked about when I first started? Yeah, so let's talk about another option that you might have heard about. Again, this is a great option, but there's limitations. Oh, and I did forget to say that one of the things that most people don't know that I found really shocking was that the average student that does dual enrollment graduates high school with 12 college credits. How many of you thought it was more than that? I did. I was thinking like, oh, people are graduating with 45, 60 credits. Again, 12 credits is amazing. Nobody is saying not. So I always tell kids, I don't care what you earn or what you learned in high school, as long as you were getting an education, you're ahead of the game. You're ahead of your peers. And so it's not that 12 isn't a lot of credits, but it's amazing to put this stress on a younger student that leads them to being about 12 credits ahead, which is usually one semester of college. Okay, so one of the things I wanted to show you, again, was the difference between, we're going to talk about right now alternative credits, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard about them, but just to compare before we move on, dual enrollment, again, you're going to have where you're collecting credits, but you don't know how the in-school is going to accept them. Now, if you stay right here in Houston and you go to a community college, a lot of the schools have I just lost my track of mine. I can't think of it. An agreement that will allow you to transfer those into the four-year university. So it's the safest credit to transfer. However, a lot of us don't think about that we're going to move because that's not in the plan, and then something happens with our job, we relocate, we're military, there's just a lot of reasons. Our kids change their mind, they don't want to go to school here locally, and so when you go to any four-year university, they do not have to accept the credits how you think. Now, do we all know that marketing is marketing, whether you're in Texas or Iowa? Yes, we all know that. So that can be another thing to think about. Again, in college, everybody that comes up to me says, okay, well, those classes were so much harder than high school. And I tell them, well, let's stop and think. We went over the same information, but we had longer lectures, we had longer homework, we had longer writing assignments, right? We had more deadlines and due dates, and so that caused more stress, and we were stressed out by trying to meet those guidelines and meet those deadlines. And so another thing that your student has to do is they have to take the entrance exam to get to do dual enrollment. So at a community college, they're going to take one. They do a four-year university online. They're going to do either the SATs, ACTs, or the college will have its own entrance exam. Now, that gave my daughter a lot of anxiety. We're homeschoolers, right? We're focused on learning. We're not giving them maybe as many tests. How many of you don't take as many tests as they would in public school or private school? Yes, so my daughter, super smart, such bad test anxiety. And so once again, that can be a barrier and lead our kids to stress out. And so with doing it outside of dual enrollment, there's the option to not have to do the entrance exams. That is also for the entire bachelor's degree. So you can go through your entire bachelor's degree as well as master's degree without ever taking an entrance exam, without taking the GRE. And so a lot of families don't know about that because they've only done it the way they did years ago and they expect it's going to be the same. Let me go ahead. So next we have alternative credits. How many of you came in the room and you know about CLEP, AP exams, ACE, NCCRS, there's Dantes, there's DSST. There's this whole world that I knew nothing about until a decade ago. And so this is, again, why I love to go around and educate families, because I had no clue, besides CLEP and AP, that there were others existing. Another thing that people are surprised to know is that this didn't happen since COVID. Students have been successful earning their college degree at a university outside of the classroom since the 1900s. That blew me away. I had no clue. And so again, AP exams, CLEP are, I would say, the most popular. How many of you actually earned CLEP or AP credit? Yeah, there's always a couple. And so it's an amazing way to earn college credit. How many of you that did it because it was less money and you saved time? Right? Two things that we all love in this room. I don't care what walk of life, who you came in today with, the knowledge base that you have. We all love to save time and money. And so we want to do the same thing for our kids. We don't want to sacrifice quality. So I always love to point out that no matter how you earn college credit, it's about quality, not quantity. And so again, these credits are amazing. And I went down this rabbit hole for a couple years of all the different kinds of college credit that's alternative. Again, families a lot of times think that this is recent, maybe in the last 5 years since COVID or 10 years. And so once again, students have been successful outside of the typical university classroom for over 130 years. This was another surprise to me. Who would have thought that this was going on that long ago, that students were successful? And so if you have a student that also has social anxiety or stress or anything like that, this can be another great option because they don't have to go to the classroom. Again, a lot of families also have limitations on getting their kids there because they're working full time. They don't want their 15-year-old in a classroom with 21-year-olds. That was I said, no way Jose is my 15-year-old girl gonna be in there with these 20-something-year-old boys. And so there's a lot of positives that come with distance learning and alternative credit. So this is my baby, this is Jordan, and this is how it all started. I was going down this path just like you today, and I was looking for the best option. I only knew of a few options, and so what I realized, though, is that none of us have the time to put in the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours that I did. Because when I first started, I found out about these options, and then I found out that as homeschoolers, we were gonna have to do this through high school. How many of you wanna sit on the edge of your seat and hope and pray that it goes right? I don't. I didn't. That's what led me on this journey. And so, again, this is my daughter, Jordan. And so one of the things that I didn't want to do as a homeschooler, how many of you homeschoolers love the flexibility that we get as homeschoolers? Yep, and once we have it, we're not going to give it up, right? We're like, no way, you're not taking that away. We like to wake up when we want to. We want to do school in the minivan on the way to soccer. And so, once again, I wasn't just looking for a option. I was looking for the best option so that my daughter could focus on learning and still have time for all the things that we cared about, that we were passionate about, that we were involved in. My daughter played soccer year-round. She played club soccer as well. She never gave up any of it. My daughter volunteered. She was in co-op. She was in youth group. She did all the things. I always tell people my daughter is an artist, so don't think my daughter woke up in the morning and said, "Mom, can we do school?" That's not my daughter. So if you're thinking, well, my kid isn't like this kid, no, she never woke up wanting to do school. She wanted to do art. And so in her spare time, she had the time to start her own company. You can see some of the projects that she did. People tell me all the time, I tell them that she learned how to decorate cakes and won contests, and they're like, why? And I'm like, no. When you homeschool, it's why not? Why not? She wanted to learn how to decorate cakes, and she did. And so I love, once again, that this is not about either or. That's usually what things are about. It's like, well, you can do this, but this is what you have to sacrifice. And I'm not willing to sacrifice anything, and I don't want your kids to either, because they have so many more opportunities in 2025 than there ever was 10 years ago. So your student can earn a quality education with the flexibility and the affordability that you want and need. This is really important because I also needed to save money. I didn't want to take a second mortgage out. How many of you also don't want to take a second mortgage? And I also didn't want my daughter to go in debt with student loans. So the average student is paying on their student loans for 30 years. And I tell people all the time, ask in 10 years what it's going to be, and they're going to say the average student is paying for 40 years because people are not paying off their student loans. They are just paying the interest. And so this makes a difference that it's affordable and that it's flexible. So that's what I realized. When I travel to these different states, I help in 7 different countries, and what I realized was that we all have these things in common. We want the same things. We want affordability, flexibility, but people sometimes forget the last one, which is my favorite, and that's efficiency. So again, we're going to focus on quality, but not on quantity. We're not going to do something. A lot of parents say, well, in high school, they should probably be spending 7 to 8 hours homeschooling, right? And then I look around and I'm like, no, they don't need to. If they're focused on learning, they can do it in 2 to 3 hours a day and earn their bachelor's degree by the end of high school. And so again, another benefit is learning on the go. I don't know about you, but we have tons of families that are like, we travel, we live on a boat, we travel around the world, we live in an RV, and we're RV homeschoolers, you name it. Even if it's just because your students are in sports, we've had actors do our program, we've had athletes, Olympic athletes do our program. The idea is if you want to be on the go, you should be able to, because we homeschool. And so what I love is that everything that your kids can do to earn this college credit is based on learning to mastery. That is so important to me as an educator, and so that's what I wanted for my daughter. Once again, we have the flexibility, so you can be in the sports, you name it, everything that your family does. Most of our kids have jobs, internships, apprenticeships before they graduate high school. Not that they need to, but they can. And that it's about opportunities for our kids. So you can save 4 years of high school. How many of you wish that you could have saved 4 years of being in school? Because my hand, like I have both hands up. I'm an educator and I love learning, but I didn't like school, because I realized it was a waste of time, and I didn't enjoy not having the time to focus on learning. So the other great thing is that your kids do not have to waste their time studying for ACTs and SATs. Usually we need them to do that to either get into a college, to stand out, or for a scholarship. But you don't need a scholarship if you're paying $10,000 for all 4 years of high school and all 4 years of college. That's $10,000 total. That's everything. So we can save money, but not sacrifice on the quality. Okay, so people really say, how can you do this in less than 3 hours a day? And I always tell families, if you came in today and you were thinking, okay, I have a gifted and talented student, they're gonna love this, because they can see wasted time a mile away. I know you already know this. If you have an average student, they're gonna love this because they're gonna enjoy learning and get their love of learning back. If you have a student that has learning disabilities or special needs, your student can still do this in less than 3 hours a day and have their bachelor's degree. So I'm gonna share a couple testimonials that give this example, but a lot of families always think, High school graduation, having a bachelor's degree, this cannot be for my kid. They're remedial in math, they struggle. No. This is for your student too, and that's my favorite part of the job. When I was walking around, I wanted something for my daughter. My daughter had learning disabilities. She struggled in school. I had a learning disability and struggled in school. And I went to become a teacher so I could make a difference and help students love learning. Not love school, love learning. And so that's what this is all about, is that your student can also do it. It's kind of the thing that people always think or disqualify one of their kids. We usually have, if you have multiple kids, you have the one that's advanced, you have the one that always struggles, and so you can kind of put this into perspective for every student in your family. But the why behind why this works for every student is because it's bite-sized lessons. We all learn best when things are broken down into bite-sized chunks of information. That allows our brains to learn the information, process it, and apply it before we learn new information. How many of you go on YouTube when you need to get a quick recipe or learn how to do something around the house? And what happens when you see that it's 29 minutes? You're like, not today. And you keep scrolling until you see the one that says 5 minutes and 4 seconds, right? Well, our kids are the same way. And so we want to break these down into fun, engaging, bite-sized chunks of information. The kids learn it, they understand it, they process it, and research shows that they retain it, because that's how we all learn best. The other thing that I love when I created this for my daughter was I wanted it to be visual and focused on the visual and auditory learner. That's because 95% of us in this room today learn best when we see and hear information at the same time. Did you know that? Yeah, so of course our kids are the same way. And if 95% of us learn best this way, why do we do education the same way as 100 years ago and 50 years ago? I say it's insanity. That is why I'm here today to say, if we know something's broken and it's not working, how many of you remember what you studied for that Friday exam back in 7th grade? Yep, me either. But what are we going to do with our kids next year in this fall? If we're not careful, we're going to do the same thing that somebody did with us when we were in 7th grade, and we already know it doesn't work and that there's a better way. The other thing that I love is that it's self-paced. Because again, if you look at the different kids in your family, you usually have one that goes slower, one that goes faster, one that needs more one-on-one support. You have the time because it's all self-paced. What does self-paced mean? This is what people ask me all the time. No, it's really self-paced. You get to decide if you take 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years on a class. You pay the same price. Our classes are $249. It does not matter how long your student takes. What's great about this is if you have a 10th grader who took biology last year, how many of you know that with college credit, they're going to have to take biology again? But not in this program. Because they already learned it, and if they mastered it, we're going to give them a review for a week, and they're going to earn the college credit and the open book test. They're going to show mastery. They're going to move on. And so it's so neat to see that self-paced in this program means what it says. We already talked about the no SATs and ACTs. This one, oh my gosh, it's so cute to see high schoolers. This is the one that gets them. The high schoolers like, wait, what? Because all of their friends have been studying for the PSATs since middle school. They've been doing their practice tests. And so for them, they are relieved at the stress of not having to memorize for a test. How many of you, once again, remember what you did when you were cramming for your SAT or ACTs? We put the information in, we skill and drill, we just did it as much as we could, and then we moved on, and we never thought about it again. This is another thing about our program is that we're a degree completion program. I am not about collecting credits. So I talked to you about the different ways you can earn college credit, and all of those lead to collecting credits. That's where I decided that I wanted to do something different, because when we collect credits, we don't have the guarantee of how they're going to transfer. So that's never a win for us homeschooling parents, because we're spending money, our kids are spending time. And so we don't want to spend that time and money and then not know how they transfer. We collect stories, unfortunately, at these conventions of people who did dual enrollment at their community college. They did everything right. They spent all the money. Their kids worked hard. They gave up their summers. They gave up opportunities. And then the college did not accept the credits the way they thought. So what's different about our program is it's a degree completion. We actually pick the university first. So before we start, we pick the university, because if you know the end destination, then you can make a plan to meet that goal. And so that's what we do. We set up a pathway for your students so that we don't have to stress for 4 years about whether the credits are going to transfer. We don't have to stress about anything, because they're guaranteed to transfer, because I partner with universities so that you have that guarantee. So we meet you. We have an entire team of 16 of us that support you the entire way from day one until they graduate with their degree. How many of you are like, well, this is really cool, but my gosh, when am I going to do this? When am I going to figure this out? When am I going to be able to do it for my students? And so I was in the same boat. And so this is where we create a personalized learning pathway for your students. This is your roadmap for the rest of high school, the rest of college. So we map out on a high school plan how every class meets the high school requirements. Remember, you're doing one class. You're doing U.S. history. And technically, U.S. history for college is 2 classes. It's American History 1 and American History 2. You're going to take those in 1 year in high school. When you're done, you're going to get the 2 high school credits, and you're going to get 6 college credits. So we're going to map it out so that you can see that your kids are meeting everything that they need to. Even though we know that here in Texas, we have a lot of flexibility. We also give you a degree plan. That's that roadmap. That's what takes away the guessing, the guesswork, the fear, all of the anxiety that are we doing the right thing. You no longer have to worry about, does my kid need this class to get into college? What are we supposed to do for science? Are we supposed to do anatomy and physiology? Do we need to do physics? You don't have to worry about it, because it's all mapped out for you. So how many of you, when you get in the car to drive, you go on Google Maps or Apple and you're like, take me to Costco? Now, if you decide not to use that and you hit construction, you hit an accident, is it any different? Are we both going to get to Costco? Yeah. Am I going to be happier? Yes. You're probably going to be tired and aggravated. We're both going to the same end destination. There's not one isn't less than the other. They're the same destination. And so what we want to do is give you a roadmap that's efficient, that cuts out the wasted time, the wasted money, that cuts out how many of you did a class because your advisor told you, and you went back the next semester and they're like, oh, it's a new advisor. And they're like, why did you take that class? That was my experience. Or how many of you decided to take a class or a major and changed your mind, right? And we wasted time and money. So another thing that I love about this is that all of our students do classes like personal finance, leadership. They do marketing. They do, gosh, now my brain is entrepreneurship. They do these classes because we want them to figure out what their gifts are, what their strengths are in high school, so that we don't have to do what we did and change majors and waste time and money. I also do that on purpose because remember when we went, we were at that age where we're like, oh, we know everything. I don't know, we're 21, and we're trying to figure it out, and we don't have our parents' guidance. What if when they were 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18, and they had our guidance, and we could help them research and do internships or apprenticeships or go down different paths and research and take these different classes and find out if they like criminal justice? We give them criminal justice. Again, we give them these different classes, hoping that it sparks something in them. But how amazing to do that while they have our guidance. So again, if you're sitting here going, this is great, but how am I going to be able to do it? I'm going to go back to work next week. I'm busy, and I'm the PTA president. Who knows all the things we all are busy on, because there's a long list. The idea is that we're here to support you, because my goal and my mission is that anybody that wants to do this can do this. It's another option, and options lead to opportunities for our kids. So parents ask me all the time, well, what if they want to go to law school? Great. This is not a lesser degree. This is an accredited degree. I'm going to share, again, another testimonial, but we want to help and support you every step of the way. So I had somebody tell me at a convention that, I get it, you're Yoda. And I thought, okay, refresh me. That's my husband's department, not really mine. What do you mean? And they said, you're not the hero, you're the guide in the story. And I love that, because you're the hero in your family story because you want to sacrifice and homeschool. And we all know that there's a sacrifice. Not that I wouldn't do it again over and over and over and over, but you're the hero in your family's story for being here today amongst all of these meetings and people, and just, it's overwhelming. We just want to be the guide that helps you, because we've done this over 10,000 times. And let me tell you, we've made every mistake along the way. But you don't have to make your own mistakes. If you have a guide, you can get to the same destination and have an expert to help lead the way. So this is my first testimonial. This is Larissa and her 3 girls. And what I love about Larissa is that she first signed up her senior in high school. Then she signed up her 8th grader. Then the next week she signed up herself, and she said, well, you said I could do it too, right? I've been a dental hygienist for 20 years, and I've just never finished my degree, and I'm homeschooling my kids in your program, and I want to do it alongside of them. Then her oldest daughter was away at ASU, Arizona State University, living on campus in a dorm in her first semester. And she called her mom crying and saying, this is so not fair. Ava says she's going to graduate before me. And of course, this is her younger sister who's a senior in high school. And if you have any siblings, you know it's always a competition. And so what's so amazing is that the senior in high school finished that year. The daughter, Caitlin, who was away at ASU, came home at December and finished, and her mom did as well. So they all 3 walked last year in New York across the Excelsior University stage. And now this year, Lexi's in 9th grade, and she has 37 credits finishing out the year. And so what I love about it is this is a family affair. If you have a student that you homeschooled and they already graduated, they're at community college, this is for them. If you have a student, we don't put any age minimum or maximum, because we have students that are ready in middle school. That's up to you, because you know your students best, so I never like to limit anybody. This is Hayden, and this is who I was talking about earlier, who they never thought that they were going to be able to have Hayden go to college. He just knew it wasn't in the cards for him because of his different struggles that he has in learning. And what I love about Hayden is he was so smart. He just had all these struggles that he thought were going to keep him from being successful. And so not only did Hayden do this program, he graduated at 16. Like us homeschoolers like to prove, right, to the world that we're different and that there's a better way. But what I love about this is that Hayden, as you can see in the picture, did not give up his passion for music. He was in every competition. He's now working full-time. He just happened to have his teacher who taught him piano. She gave all of her students to him because she was retiring. So he's working full-time, and he's doing his master's in music in the fall. And so what I love is this is not about having our students grow up too soon. My daughter told me in 9th grade, "This is so wrong, Mom. Why didn't we do this last year?" And I'm like, "Kid, you're doing high school and college. Like, you don't get it. This is harder." But it wasn't harder. because she was actually engaged in the learning process. She understood what she was learning and she was having fun. She fell in love with criminal justice. She took forensic science, which is another class your students can take. She did a fingerprint class and went around and tried to lift fingerprints everywhere around our house for a couple months. It's just so neat to see our kids learning new things. So I tell people, we learn to mastery. How many of you know that if you know what an adverb is, we don't need to do it every year, right? Yes. And I tell kids all the time when they come up to my booth, guess what you're going to do in college? And they're like, I'm like, adverbs again. Yeah, it's true. This is how it's been for decades and decades. And so they're going to do the same thing next year and probably in 10 years from now. So I always say, if you turn to your student and they can tell you what an adverb is, they mastered it. Because you put them on the spot, they have nothing, they didn't know it was coming, they've mastered it. We don't need to spend any more time. Let's learn about life skills, about personal finance skills. I want to be over there. I don't know. Man, I need to bring some more excitement. This is Trinity, and I love sharing Trinity's story because everybody says to me, but my student wants to go on to a specific graduate school. They want to do this, they want to do that. I got Trinity at 18 years old with this degree into an Ivy League law school, Cornell Law. She got to pick between all of the different Ivy League schools. She chose Cornell, and this year she's 21 and she's graduating law school. And so again, she's advanced, right? That I couldn't do that. It's not about that. It's about if we have kids that can, why not? She is done. She finished years before the average student goes to law school. So she was given opportunities by judges that were not offered to other students because they saw that she stood out. And I love that we could give our kids better opportunities if we homeschool. She had the time to study for the LSATs, she had time to be on a travel debate team, and she had time to volunteer, and all of those things is what she needed to get into an Ivy League law school. And so again, she didn't give up on anything. And that's what's so important because we never want to sacrifice. I just want to quickly go over, Blair is another one. She really wanted the college experience. So maybe you have a student like that. And so her mom said, okay, we're going to get the psychology degree. She did it throughout high school with me. She graduated high school. She went straight to ASU. They happened to live in Arizona, and so that's where she wanted to go. She got her forensics forensic psychology master's degree already, and this fall she's starting her doctorate program. And so once again, this isn't about sacrificing or giving something up. So if they do want that college experience, I say let's wait, let's help them to find out who they are, not waste time and money, not go in debt. My daughter is completely debt-free, and it's the biggest gift I was able to give to her by homeschooling. Amaya's amazing. I have these stories all on the smarterbyOneDegree.com website, and so you can check those out. But I'm going to also finish with, I think this is the last one, with Nicholas, because he's my nephew, and he's my second nephew to go through my program and graduate debt-free. And he wanted to be a youth pastor, and we looked at the cost of going to get a bachelor's in theology. We realized how expensive it was. It's insane. And so he said, I want to graduate debt-free for my bachelor's so I can just focus on the theology for my master's, which is a great, again, alternative to getting to the same destination. And so I love it. He's completely debt-free. He's a youth pastor here in Texas. I got to hear him actually preach in front of his entire congregation a couple months ago. And why I love sharing this story is that it's for everybody. Some people would think, okay, well, how is this going to work for becoming a youth pastor? What about that he needs a theology degree? Well, we thought of a strategy to get him to the same destination. And then I also love sharing it because I've helped my cousins graduate, my daughter graduate, 2 nephews. And so I love for people to know this is not a job. This is a blessing that I get to do, that I help my own family members, as well as anybody else that this could be a good fit for your family. Oh, there are more. Okay, they're awesome. I'm just going to let you find them on the website. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but we want to save you time and money, but we want you to give your kids all the opportunities, whether it's theater, whether it's sports, whether it's debate, whether it's co-op, whether it's apprenticeships. It does not matter. I tell families all the time, I volunteered in a youth group and kids stopped coming, and I would ask them why. And they would say, because I spent all night doing homework. I spent all night doing assignments. And I just think that that is such a tragedy, because we have our kids that have the best years of their life, and they shouldn't be stressed out. They shouldn't have anxiety. They shouldn't be depressed. They shouldn't be worried about their SAT score or anything else. So I love to share that your students do not have to sacrifice, but they have more time to be with you or your family. My daughter was always with the cousins and grandparents and you name it, and that was how we wanted it to be because we homeschooled. So instead of worrying on whether your student's going to get into college or preparing them for college, all that goes away. You no longer have to prepare them for college. You don't have to worry on whether they get into college. Parents tell me all the time, well, my oldest student got into, and then fill in the blank, right, of what college. And I always say, did you know that you can get into college? It doesn't matter who you are. Any community college will take you. Did you know that? Because you're paying them to take you. It's not about getting your kid into college. It's that they graduate with their degree. So I know of somebody who's been paying for 32 years on their bachelor's degree, and guess what? They never finished. You owe on those student loans whether you finish or not. And so this is a different option, a different alternative that can allow our students, while we're still making their decisions for their education, they're able to do something like this. Before they decide to drop out, which is 30% of students, did you know that? You're already in debt. Possibly by the time that they drop out, you don't have to worry about that. They're already done. So this is something to where your students don't have to sacrifice, your family doesn't have to sacrifice. And so I always say that we love to work smarter, not harder. And if you're that type of person that thinks the same way, I tell parents all the time, we think like that at work, and then we come home or with our kids' education, and we think that that's maybe not right, that's cutting corners. No, it's not cutting corners. We're trying to be efficient. We're working smarter, not harder. So it's the same exact thing. How many of you know that the only way that you get things done at home in the amount of time we have is by working smarter, not harder? If we weren't efficient, laundry probably wouldn't get done. There wouldn't be, dinner on the table. We're all busy. And so I am at a booth here. I don't even know what booth number. I'm such a ditz.
We're up against the wall.
When you come in, we're on the far back right wall. That's right, thank you. I was like, usually I know the booth number, but I'm gonna answer questions. Everything's on our website. I don't want you to pay for something else that doesn't work for your family, because I've been there and I've done that, just like I'm sure all of you have. This is where it's pay as you go, $249 a class. We have a free sample class to try. And it's awesome. It's 2 real lessons. It is the review documents that we provide for those 2 lessons, and then it's the questions and the quizzes that the kids will do for those. And so it shows you real life. It is so fun. It's the history of ice cream. And so I love it to be the first one to get your kids' feet wet. They're always so nervous about the college credit. And so this is an open book test that focuses on learning to mastery. And so we answer all the questions. We list all of our degrees. We have over 20 master's degrees. We have somewhere around 20 bachelor's degrees. If you want a business degree, a psychology degree, communications degree, we have different universities, and you can do them all no matter what state you live in. There are schools like Excelsior University, where Larissa graduated. That's actually where my daughter graduated. And we flew to New York, and she walked in the commencement ceremony. So if that's something you want to do, It was expensive, and I'm like, we really should have just done something at home. But anyway, if that's your family vacation and you do that, they can walk in the commencement ceremony at these universities. None of the universities have like an out-of-state fee. So if you go online and you see that we have schools in different states, it doesn't matter that we all live in Texas. If you're all here, like me from Texas, you have access to all of them. We also offer free consultations every day of the week to answer your questions, because we know that this is not probably something that you thought you were going to hear or have ever heard. And so once again, we know that you're going to think of more questions, but we also answer so many of them on the website. And then smarterby1degree.com is the teens, and then we also help adults, because we had to start it because we were helping so many parents who said, can I do this too? I have this many credits, I just never finished, and I really need it for a promotion at work. And so our adults do it in usually 6 months, depending on how many credits they have, but always under a year. And so that's sb1d.com. And so it's amazing that we can help family as well as your homeschool students. We also have a special program for heroes. So if you or your kids or anybody that you know is in the military or they're a first responder, we have an entire bachelor degree, no matter how many credits. If it's 0, it's $7,995 for a business degree. And we love trying to give back and help our military and first responders, because they have important jobs and they're already pulled thin. And so we want them to be efficient and get that degree.